Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Maria is running late. She is getting through traffic, and Terrence is as well. And I believe Kelly is here. Hello, Kelly. Perfect timing. So we'll get started on the agenda, and once the facilitators get here, they'll take over. But I'm Liz Adams from CRL Associates. And why don't we quickly go around the room and just say our names just at the table here. Armando, you want to start?
Sure. Armando, hi, I'm Mark Robin with District, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Ann Hayes with the Westfield Company. I'm Emily Brown. I'm representing Albus Burke's office. Unfortunately, we couldn't be here tonight. There's another community meeting regarding gang violence that he's attending.
Jocelyn Hiddle, Colorado State University.
Ian Elizabeth, I'm kind of a global hybrid right now.
Paul Andrews, National Western Stock Show.
Kelly Lead, Mayor's Office of the National Western Center.
Michael Samula, Family Environmental.
Patricia Carmody, Colorado Watershed Assembly.
Anna Jones, NWC-CAC.
John Salpian, Bowville.
Drew Dutcher from the area. I'm also on the EOC.
Vernon Hill, DJ Properties, Bowville.
Great. So we'll get into our partner updates first. Kelly, and I believe you have to leave at some point
I
this
do.
evening.
Yep.
So let's get you taken care of.
Great, thank you. So two updates from the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center. One is at last month's meeting, you met some members of our CH2M team that has been hired by the city as our program management team. So we continue to do the onboarding of those team members into the Mayor's Office of the National Western Center office. And as part of that, we are obviously translating all the historical documents of the planning to date that will ultimately lead to issuing a scope, schedule, and budget for the program sometime this summer. So that work continues and will go unabated for the next several months until we get closer to releasing the scope, schedule, and budget this summer. And once we have more details on the actual release date, obviously we'll let this group know. The second update is as part of the campus placemaking RFQ, proposals were due yesterday. We received 7 proposals. Literally just got them yesterday. And the goal, I think one of the committee items tonight is the selection of a representative to help ultimately vet and select that team. And the goal is to issue a notice to proceed to that selected team in June of this year. And then they would officially commence work in August of this year. And it is as a reminder, a 2-year contract. And as part of, obviously, what folks will start to see as part of the review is folks attempt to start to lay out the various tasks we've asked them to do, which are pretty exhaustive and extensive. And for those of you that helped, and many of you participated in the master planning process, remember we would have frequent updates and engagements. Eric Anderson led those as part of the PB team and now as part of the CH2 team. So Eric, many of you will remember Eric, will play a key role in that effort. So that will consume a lot of our time is now going through that selection process here over the next couple months.
Kelly, Eric's back there by the cookies.
Oh, I should have looked back there. Okay. Yeah. That guy by the cookies will be helping us.
Great. Now, let's see, Paul?
Yes. Although I'm looking at Eric right now, Shaft Front anyway, he's right across there.
Another
He's got Eric Anderson behind me? Okay. Stock show, we are working diligently on Rodeo All-Star Weekend, April 14th and 15th, coming right up here. So we're gathering all the stars that will compete and setting up all the exhibits and so forth for Rodeo All-Star. And we're also launching deep into the Denver County Fair, which if you were not here last time, the stock show are now owners of the Denver County Fair. It will be July 21st, 22nd, 23rd here at the complex. So we're revamping the entire programming, I would say, for that is getting revamped. Keeping most things that we thought were really good, and we're exiting things we didn't think were so good. So that is going on, and then many, as Kelly mentioned, many National Western Center meetings. The staff and I are attending likely 10 or so a week, and I'm splitting that up between many of my staff members, but Kelly and CH2 are rapidly moving forward with planning, and it's great. So that is taking a lot of our time as well. Outside of that, Liz, we're at the end of our fiscal year, so the audit and the financials are keeping us very busy. So.
Excellent. Jocelyn?
Thanks. So just a few things to mention. One is that we had a soft launch of our equine assisted therapy program. I think it was last Friday here at the complex. Had about 20 folks, mostly from Bruce Randolph, who came and took advantage of that initial therapy. We'll have a grand opening of that program later in the spring, but this was sort of a soft launch trial run. Went really well. We're really happy with the fact that the National Western has worked with us to allow equine assisted therapy to be a program that we start running here now. The other thing I'll mention is that we will be interviewing CSU's project management team, which will be working closely with CH2 and others to help sort of facilitate the making the 3 facilities that we have planned a reality, and we will be selecting that team by the end of April, and suspect that we'll bring them to meet you all at some point after they are have gotten their feet under them. The last thing I'll mention is we've also been working a lot with the stock show on the county fair. So we've got some other folks in the peanut gallery back there from CSU. Do you guys want to introduce yourself, Rusty?
Sure, thank you.
Just say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rusty Collins. I'm the director of the local CSU Extension Office located just south of the city.
Great, thanks, Rusty.
Hello, everyone. I'm Benzel Jimerson. I work for Denver County Extension, CSU, and lead the Family Leadership Training Institute in 80205.
And I'm Candace Bailey. I also work with CSU Extension, and I am the facilitator for the Child Leadership Training Institute here in Colorado.
So I sprung that on them. I didn't know I was going to ask them to introduce themselves, but it's great to have more engagement from CSU, from our Office of Extension. And particularly, we are working with the stock show on our presence at the Denver County Fair, which is something we have had historically, but with the changeover in ownership and the thinking about how we can make some additions, we're thinking about what CSU's presence at the Denver County Fair might be, expanded presence. And it's been really great to work with the stock show folks. They are thinking really creatively about how to keep that event successful and really breathe a little bit of new life into it too. So that's it for me.
Great. Do we have History Colorado? Do you have any comments?
Sure.
Okay. And then is Liz from DMNS here? Or? No, because Nancy's not. Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to make an announcement with History Colorado. If you haven't been over to the museum lately, we just opened a new exhibit that is called Backstory. It's with the Denver Art Museum, and it talks about Western art. We have Western art from the museum plus artifacts that go with that. In regards to the stock show, we're working with the mayor's office to set up a meeting to talk about how to document the historic resources, because they just hired a new team to start looking at that, so we'll be working on that very soon.
Great, thank you. Okay. And Bill, we have you here, is that right? Okay. I had never met Bill, so just had to ask somebody who it was. So next on our agenda is one of the items that you all as a committee had talked about, and Betty I think brought up at the last meeting or the one before that, was talking about the RTD station that is now called the National Western Center Station, but you all are hoping that perhaps it could have Illyria in the name. And we thought the best thing to do would be to bring somebody from RTD to discuss that a little bit and explain to us what the process is and just give you guys a chance to ask some questions. So we have today Bill Soroy is with us from RTD. Bill, if you want to go ahead and stand up there and maybe talk a little bit about the process, and then I think we'll open it up for questions.
Thanks, Liz. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Liz. Again, my name is Bill Soroy with RTD. We do have a station naming process or policy in place, which typically, with most of our corridors, about, depending on the time, 3 to 4 years ahead of time, we kind of initially identify the names. There is a process, though, to change that, so there is we can do that. Typically, what we'd like to do is we like the entity, whoever that would be, if it would be a neighborhood group or city, to kind of coordinate in terms of having the city kind of acknowledge that if it's a neighborhood desire or city desire, whoever it is, to acknowledge kind of that, and just to make sure in terms of that there's a general kind of consensus on that, on the naming of that. So the good thing about it in terms of where we are with the North Metro line is that I think we're not quite to the point where in our policy we state that if we get to past a certain point where we start making signs and other things like that, there's a cost. We haven't gotten there yet. So the good thing is that we're early enough that the change can be requested, and then again the board would have to act on that change, assuming that there would be approval of that. So it's a fairly simple process, but I'll stop there and just open it up for any questions that anybody on the group may have.
Does anybody have any questions? Yep, okay, Armando? Go to
Do you actually have a name for it now?
Yeah, I have down, and I don't know if anybody's from North Metro is here, but I thought that the name that I had down was 48th and Brighton at National Western Center. I think that's
49th.
the name now.
49th.
What?
49th.
Is it 49th?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the name you have on the station now?
That's the name on the station now.
And how'd you arrive at that?
I believe that there was some discussion with the city a while back. I think this was actually
When Phil was still
yeah, it was in 2015.
2 years ago.
Spring of 2015, about the naming for all the stations. And in this particular, I know we had conversations with the city and with Kelly and others.
Okay.
But I want to go on the record now. We are the National Western Office, and I think Anna would support me in this, is we are supportive of the neighborhood's desire to change the name and are happy to lead the effort to do so. I believe it's Elyria Station at the National Western Center. I think that's what. So
We'll jump in on that as well and support Kelly on that as well.
So we would be happy to initiate the letter of support.
This is Elyria.
Correct. That is correct. Yep. And then the adjoining plaza, which we've also committed to as part of the master plan, would tell the history of the community. So beyond the station itself, which is under the ownership of RTD, as you step off the platform and into the station or the larger plaza, it would also be Elyria Plaza, and we would tell that story.
I vote we change.
I would think that it should involve some of the historical aspects, just saying the neighborhood. But years ago, I remember the post office was referred to as the stockyard station.
That is correct.
I don't know if it's still official stockyards or just whatever. The people change. And somehow this area is also the old stockyards area. So I would throw that out for people's consideration. We're talking about some historical aspect of the neighborhood, area, and the use, past use, and hopefully some more future use. So I just put that out there for your consideration. If anybody's got any ideas about it.
So the one thing I'll add, just in terms of what our policy says, is that we do want to have a geographic reference in the name. Typically, that or iconic, and I have to check about, saying again, now we have 49th and Brighton. If whether or not we change that or National Western Center, I have to check on that in terms of exactly. But typically, we like to have a street or identify so somebody that looks at it knows that it's a Colorado or is it Brighton or wherever it is. So that's typically how we do it. So just one other thing to consider.
I would think anybody in this 5-state area would know what the Denver Union Stockyards is. So that's as geographic as you can get, I guess.
Well, but what about if somebody from Calgary comes here for something? Because that's the question.
Then we would like them to get off, and because they're lost, and learn about them, and maybe spend some money on local goods.
Armando, I think, had a question.
Yeah, I think I was on 41st Street, Fox Street, the light rail station, in the park committee. And I think what's missing from this discussion right now is that we need to incorporate some artwork that's reflective of the community. And what I mean by that statement is Latino community. Sure, it's national treasure, like the Western heritage and all that other fun stuff, but still we need to reflect the demographics that are here too. So I think not only the name, but also from a cultural perspective, the hybrid design at bus station I think some culture needs to be reflected in it, and I'd like to recommend some individuals from this committee to be on that.
And I'm not exactly sure, and somebody in the room might be able to tell me, but I'm not exactly sure where we are in that process of.
Haven't even started as far as I know.
So I think that is something I'll get the North Metro team and make them aware of that.
What's the timeline on the naming?
Well, I think, the sooner the better. I mean, so, if there would be a formal request made, I mean, like Kelly said, if it would be through the city or through through his office, to make that request with the neighborhood support, that would be ideal. And do that in the next couple months would be great, so that we get ahead of before we get any further along in terms of with the project itself.
How many stations are within the geographic, stops are within the geographic area that we're discussing?
One.
Just one?
Just the one here at the
Just
at
one
the
right here.
campus.
So there's nothing else that's within Globeville or Elyria Swamp?
Not on this line. This is the first station out of, so as you leave Denver Union Station, this would be the first stations northbound out of DUS. And then I think the next one, you got to go all the way across the big bridge, 72nd,
72nd,
I think is the next stop.
Yeah,
It's quite a distance.
Other questions? Oh, go ahead, Drew.
What do you need from us?
I mean, just basically a letter saying, here's what we would like to change the name to, and kind of, that there's, again, if it can be, if it's an agreement or a signature or something about acknowledgement from the neighborhood organizations, all the organizations that support it would be great, identifying that, just making a request. And I can get back to Kelly about specifically who they address that to, but I'm just trying to think right now offhand that would probably be Dave Genova, our general manager.
So what I would suggest is, Kelly, thanks for your support with this, and Paul. I think maybe before the next CAC meeting, neighborhood organizations that have an opinion on this or feel strongly, one way or another, should submit a letter to Kelly.
Or an email or what, I mean, I want to make it as
yeah.
easy as you, to make it whatever works.
And then maybe we could discuss it in this forum next month.
Yeah, I could bring a draft letter based on what we've received today, saying, list the organizations that would, whatever the name is, and I defer to you guys, but, I mean.
Because it sounds like we need to come up with the actual name.
And Bill, can you check too, because the one distinction that I know is a bit different for destination stops.
Yeah.
So like the Bronco station is Mile High, right? And then Elitch's Pepsi Center does not have a street designation.
I think you're right, and I was just trying to think, and I was looking at it, so I think you're right, that National Western's, if it's National Western Center, I think that may be fine. But
would qualify as a destination.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Oh, go ahead.
Well, just another question. I understand it's being contemplated renaming Broadway, so if you put 48th, 49th, and Brighton into the name, that name changes.
That's something I don't know anything about, so.
Hey, did you have another? Go ahead, it's fine.
I don't know if people know Darcy, who was the transportation person. She did an interesting thing one time when she was on the, I don't know, she kind of did a call for names, and there was like 3 or 4 or 5, and then emailed them out. And I don't know if we want to do that or not, but I mean, I like the Elyria suggestion myself, but I'm a little bit concerned about 2 or 3 groups coming up with 2 or 3 different names and several individuals, and then how do we sort this out? So, but I like to see what people come up with. I wonder if we could suggest we get to Liz's suggestions, and we kind of have a chance to, I mean, we don't want to overdo something like this. We've got worldly things to do here, but anyway, I'm a little concerned because there's already 2 to 3 names on the table here. So.
Elyria is a town. Elyria is where the stock show is.
Elyria Key.
So
anyway, I'm just, all of a sudden I didn't know how to if you have 3 groups, and I would say individuals too, not just these, groups, but if you have, we could end up with 3 different groups with 3 different names without some kind of a clearinghouse.
Well, why don't we do this? I think that's a good idea, AE, is that we'll say, I will put out a message to CAC, but also to the neighborhood associations, an email that says, we're gathering names for the station, and we will discuss them at the next CAC meeting. And then once that, so we'll leave ample time to let people, talk about the names that they're suggesting. And then we can do another, we can do sort of a ballot and get a sense. And then we would bump it to Kelly to then say that he has demonstrated neighborhood support and go from there. Does that sound reasonable? Yep.
I'm just thinking about everything that's going on. Wouldn't the naming part be part of the placemaking thing? I mean, the whole point of the National Western Center is to bring people from outside Colorado in here, and they know they're coming to the National Western Center. If you put a different name on it, the National Western Center, it's making it harder for them to get here.
Well, I think chime in here, Bill, but whether it's Elyria Station it's going to have to say at National Western Center. So it's going to have to end with at National Western Center.
And that way that fulfills the geographic location requirement, I think, is what we determined. So, okay. Well, let's do that. I'll get that process going, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting. And now, I'll turn it over to Maria Garcia-Berry.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, guys. Thanks, Bill. Who's here for museum mention signs? I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Liz.
My understanding is that you did not get a chance to give a report, so if you would like to give an update as to what's going on at the museum, this is your time.
Well, I'm so glad to be here tonight. I'm Liz Davis, and I'm representing Nancy Walsh, who's usually here attending for the museum. And, our update is really all about spring break is happening right now, and it's awesome, and that's why I was late, so apologies. The traffic coming out of the zoo and the museum was epic.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Were you in it too?
Colorado was fun.
Yeah. So I'm just delighted to be here and representing the museum. Thank you.
Can I say one thing? I went to that Girls in Science STEM. Yes. You guys, it was awesome. Was that the 3rd year? I just really wanted it to be out in the neighborhoods, that's all. And I really think this is the kind of thing National Western could be doing right in the neighborhoods with the schools. There's been a small move to have a few places open on these tour science field trips, but there's a little bit of tension around that because it's like a competition kind of thing. But I really like that open source. It was phenomenal, and I took bags and bags of stuff to kids away from there, and it's just so I just want to say that it was phenomenal. I think there's some real potential there. So.
Okay.
I should have mentioned it.
Go ahead.
I got to mention it. Sorry. This is too hilarious. Actually, here she's on my phone too. Right here. CSU had dogs that were trained to let the kids bandage them. They were phenomenal. They were unbelievable. It was like
They're therapy dogs that we partnered with. So we had veterinary students and therapy dogs, and the therapy dogs will let you do whatever you want. So
some of them were huge.
Great Danes and little guys, and we rotated them out when they got tired of getting poked and bandaged. But the kids could come and listen to, use a stethoscope and listen to hearts and breathing, and they would just lie there and let you fake bandage their feet or whatever.
It was like the most popular thing there.
Oh, that's so cool.
The lines were...
And you could sort of do surgery on stuffed animals. So we're really, really happy that our vet school has such great creative people in it. It was actually organized by a sophomore veterinary student. She did much of the legwork to make that happen, and I think she's just a real creative thinker. So appreciate the opportunity to be there. Sorry.
It was a weekend.
Just one day, right?
But it's a very replicable thing. So we
can
talk about how to bring that to some other kind of event. I think AE is making that suggestion. I think it's a good one.
Absolutely. Just one last thing, immediately right there in Swansea Elementary, kids were showing up with white coats. I'm going to be a vet. Oscar's daughter. It was incredible. Oscar comes out, she's got it. It's career day at the school. This is elementary school. This is where it starts. And goes in, and And it's like, I'm gonna be a vet. And I said, oh, that's cool, like a doctor. She says, no, I'm a vet. Be a vet.
Neighborhood full of vets. Do you want to? All righty. So we're going to, Terrence is on his way, by the way, but the next part of the agenda is the election of representative to placemaking RFQ selection committee. We have two, is that correct? We have two nominees, self-nominations. You guys have the letters from each one. So I think it would be appropriate if both nominees would speak at this point. Do we have to draw, paper, scissors, rock, or as to do as to who goes first, who doesn't? But I think it would be important. Back, Vern. Yeah. Double-sided.
Saving paper.
Saving paper. So Anne and John, who are both members of the CAC, obviously, and we want to make sure that they each get time to speak. So, Anne, well, I'll just make an arbitrary decision. Go for it.
Should I do a microphone?
You do.
Okay.
When we have the new National Western Center, we will have electronics, right? Right, Paul? We will have cool.
Where's Kelly?
Oh, Kelly left.
It's all about the budget.
Erica, we will have cool electronics, right? That people can just talk and you won't have to.
Well, thank you all. Yes, I put my name in to be considered for the representative for the selection committee for the public realm consultant. And the reason why I put my name in is twofold. One, I do have a background in studying public realm. In my master's degree, I did study it for a full year. And so I have a passion for it, and I try to get involved with it wherever I can. And the first time I did, with my experience, was with Denver Union Station. I sat on the selection committee for Hargraves, who was the public realm landscape architect. They designed the public realm. And I did that through a group I was involved with, Union Station Advocates. It was a citizen advisory group. And so I stayed, we selected Hargraves through that process, and then I stayed involved in the public process all along the way until it was built. So that was extremely informative. I learned a lot about how the design team interfaces with the public and how the public should interface with the design team and when it's important to do that. So I learned a lot there. And then as well, I sat on the selection committee when Parks and Rec selected a consultant for their downtown parks master plan, which just happened a couple of years ago. And so learned a lot from that as well. And I will just very quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time, just mention the things that I look for. So it's important to note this is not creating a plan, this is selecting the consultant. So what I look for when we're at this stage of the game is the team members that the groups bring in. Are they complementary skill sets with one another? Is there one person who kind of outshines everyone else? I mean, you really want a team that's well balanced and brings a whole broad spectrum of skill sets to you. You want to look at their design experience with imagery, because if their designs all look too similar, you got a team that doesn't interact with the public very well, because they're just coming up with their own design. They're not listening to the public and putting what they hear in the design. So you want to look for, public spaces that look different in different contexts. You want to make sure that they consider the historical context, which John and Annie clearly identified. That's really important, especially for this site. You want to make sure that they have a mind to connecting to the adjacent neighborhoods, which there are several here. You want to make sure that they know how to create a sense of place. So you see that in some of the designs they've done. You want to make sure they have a mind to the economics of the public realm, because there's often opportunities to make some money off of fee-based spaces. Not sure we're going to do that here. That's also part of the process, but it might happen. One of the things that we fall down a lot on public realm is that we don't figure out how to manage it and fund it, because there's activation, and that's a really, really important part of it. And it often gets dismissed or, kind of pushed aside. We'll do that later. Got to have a team that really understands that and how to structure the management of it. And then the very most important thing is how they're going to approach interfacing with the public. What does that look like? And are they good at it? What is their plan? If they don't have a very specific plan about how to do it, then it makes you worry. So anyway, those are all the things that I look for at this stage of the game. And so I'm happy to be a representative and turn it over to John.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is John Olson. If you don't know me, I'm the Director of Preservation Programs at Historic Denver. I've been happy to be a part of the NWC-CAC and to really be involved in everything that's about the community here as well as the campus here and how those interact. And it's interesting, you know, Ann mentioned the Union Station process, which I was also a part of. It was actually the first time I met Ann. So it's interesting that we're both going from a representational factor from that standpoint. I put myself into the ring because I think that my experience and Historic Denver's expertise really lends itself well for placemaking and for interacting between communities and for developers and for processes. This is what I do every single day of the week in terms of I do construction projects. I'm construction manager for a lot of historic projects around. What's big thing about the National Western Stock Show is, of course, we have so much heritage and so much history here, but we also have so much opportunity for what type of development is going to occur here. And there's a lot of ways this could go. This could go very, very good. And obviously everybody in this room is trying to get to that point so that we get to something that is not standing alone from the rest of the neighborhood, standing alone from the rest of Denver, and that makes all of us proud. It makes the business people proud. It makes the people who attend it proud. It also makes the people who are in the neighborhood proud about that. And so I've been involved in these types of processes, whether it's a campus type involvement. Emily Griffith School is another example of a big project that had an RFP process that Historic Denver was a part of. And so I just want to take my expertise and the expertise of Historic Denver and really start to have that connection between this committee, the neighborhood, and you know, what we're going to see from a development standpoint. Because we've been talking for a long time about what is going to happen. This is where the rubber meets the road. And it's something that I think is really important. I'm trained as an architect. That's my experience. I've worked in private architecture. I've worked for nonprofit sector. So I think I get both sides, and I'm able to see how we need to make this place a really special place. And that, from the perspective, I think, of everybody here, is how do we interconnect all of this very vibrant new development, and how do we do that in a way that honors the community as well as the legacies that surround there. So I'd be happy to be that representative for you.
Why don't we open it up for questions of all the members, comments, thoughts? Vernon? I'm going to buy another mic. I'm going to buy another mic for you.
I've got one question here about the committee and who makes the final decisions in reference to, you know, the way the committee is put together. So in other words, you know, is this a vote type situation where?
So Kelly has left. And Eric, you're leading that. So
Sure.
can you walk through the committee process?
Yep. Okay, so the selection committee is made up of representatives from the city of Denver and the neighborhood, CSU, and Western Stock Show Association. Everyone has one person that will score the submittals that came in, and there's scored, I think it's a 100-point scoring system, and there are a score sheet that they will fill out as they go through these proposals to make sure that they meet first the base requirements and then meet their needs for what they're looking for in the proposal, okay? And so what we do is then we all get into a room at the end and we look at the scores and we will shortlist, not sure how many teams yet, but the teams that score the highest will get shortlisted based on those scores, okay? Then this person will also be part of the selection committee and help interview the consultants, okay? and then everyone there will have one vote. The goal with the interview and the discussion after that is we have a consensus vote of who we're going to pick for this project. Okay?
So the city makes the final decision?
Yes, yes.
Other questions? AE?
This is related. You might want to stay.
Okay.
So I, being confused about how things arrive from the finalists to the final decision, did have the experience of looking at some of these and seeing this matrix that's on with the point system. Okay, so I just want to have that put on the table relative to a special skill that I think the representative needs to have inside the selection committee. I'm a little nervous about this point system. I saw one that was a 4-point difference. And that's an area where I feel like I would like us to have some kind of a loop in from the CAC around how can we influence the questioning that draws out some of the engagement and stuff like that. And would you say a consensus? That sounds a little bit different than whoever has the highest points, even if it's one.
Yep.
So could you kind of make that a little more transparent?
Sure, I can certainly try. I mean, the city's process is pretty well set. It is done with a scoring system. I think the thing that's flexible is how many do we shortlist?
Okay.
Okay? And we don't know yet. If they are all very close, then we shortlist all. Probably won't. But so it's, we try to do it as best we can, but we have to have points and we have to have a way to keep track and monitor. Because if it's just up in the air, well, I like them, but I don't know why, that can't work, okay?
So let me take a little liberty to AE's line of questioning. Because I think you're asking to how the two, whoever gets selected as either John or Ann, obtains feedback from you all as they're in the process of making decisions. I understand there's confidential issues that have to be addressed because you can't release, once you're in the committee, you can't release this, but there's nothing stopping the committee members from talking to members of the Citizens Advisory Committee on very global issues, individually, not in a public session, without releasing names.
I don't know the specifics on that.
Okay, I think that's what you were trying to.
Yeah, this is a follow-up to last month's, and when you came up with the word primer, about us understanding the process a little bit more so
Right.
that we can feel some that I am becoming more and more convinced that these interview processes do increase the effectiveness of the engagement components or miss the engagement potential based on how they're interviewed inside here. So I just kind of wonder how can we loop into that? Criteria, understanding the RFQ, that's what an advisory committee can do.
Since I don't have the sheet in front of me, what's the timing there?
We have the proposals already.
Right.
And so we have to shortlist by the 17th of April.
How many applied? Can you say that?
Kelly said 7.
Oh, you said 7?
So, yeah.
Can I just make one comment?
You want to
When they get
post
to
it?
the point, or whoever it is, when they get to the point where you're interviewing them, at the point in time where they've been shortlisted and you're interviewing them, I think what's very appropriate is for this group to give who's ever selected very specific questions that we would be able to probably ask in the interviews. We may not be able to ask 20 questions, but we would likely be given the opportunity to submit 2 or 3 questions that we feel are extremely important to ask. And so I think that that's a way for this group to weigh in as well, is to give whoever is selected very specific questions of things that are of concern.
That sounds.
And that's doable within the time.
Right, yeah. So will the shortlist, once shortlist is made, will the shortlist names be public?
Yes.
Okay. So that actually helps. Once the shortlist is made, that the shortlist name is public.
Prior to the decision making?
Prior to interviews.
Yeah, the shortlisted firms.
Yeah. So, okay, John?
Well, actually, I think that we as a committee are fortunate in that we have 2 candidates highly qualified, with a wealth of expertise, and will do everything that they are able to do to reflect this group's concerns, desires, apprehensions, whatever. I think that we're going to win on our selection of this individual. So I think it's time to go and get it done.
Got it. All right, we're going to hand out ballots. Liz will pick them up. MOU partners and equity partners don't vote. Neither do facilitators. Yes, you can. Sorry, council people's offices do not vote.
That's okay, I didn't look at your.
Okay.
I don't look for you. Sing my boss.
Yeah, just not to be offensive, but the city's already at the table.
It's all right.
Sorry about that.
Does anybody need a? Can we get anybody? Yeah. We wanted to, John, decide, you know.
No.
Yes, Candy, you can, of course.
No.
But if it's okay, let's say no more than the next 8 to 10 minutes, okay?
Yeah, no,
So we can get going.
I would just like to hear from both of the candidates what you think is the crown jewel piece of the identity that you want to protect, or your understanding of the community's belief about that.
I'll start that off. Obviously, this whole process is a fluid process, so I'm, as a part of the committee process, I want to completely hear more than what I've just heard in the meetings that I've attended up until now. But, I think that from a standpoint that, this is a very important site for many, many reasons. This is where, transportation networks of Denver came together. This is where communities came together. And this is also an opportunity to have a real healing in this area where we had a lot of divisions. We have a lot of physical divisions based on the highway, the railroad, the river, all of these kinds of things that have divided people over the areas. Now, sometimes that's done very good things because some of those neighborhoods have really been able to have an insular connection with each other, but it's really too bad that we don't have that interconnectedness. So from a crown jewel standpoint, we're talking about the stock show. We're talking about the history of the stock show and those areas and its interaction with the neighborhoods around it. And so what I want, what I think that a developer coming in needs to understand that while this is a regional attraction and this has a lot of opportunity from the region, it really hits the neighborhood right away. It's across the street, it's right there. And so how do we have that connection between the two? And how do we do that with the existing history that's there and with the history of the neighborhoods that are nearby?
Well, I would certainly echo everything John said. That was a great answer. I also think that this is a place that is really important to the city of Denver in general, not just because of the historical context of what it is, but also because of where it's placed. It is the gateway to downtown as well. And so I think it's this crossroads that's got a lot of history to it. It's got a lot of neighborhood adjacencies that's really important. But I'm going to answer the question a little differently, Candy, because the person who sits on this committee is helping to select the consultant, but this is going to be a really long process. And this is going to have a lot of public engagement. So my opinion is just one opinion of many, many, many this team, whoever selected, is going to hear from. And so everyone here is going to be able to weigh in and beyond this group. It's going to go beyond, the public meetings will be beyond the CAC. They're going to engage with the neighborhoods in general. And then draw from those neighborhoods to hear what is important to all of you. And so what's most important for whoever is sitting on this this team selecting the consultant is to make absolutely sure that those people have big ears, that they're going to listen. So that's really important to make sure that we select the right team, because everyone here is going to be able to, help build that story of what is most important, what's critical, what's the crown jewel of this place. So that's how I would answer that question.
Any other questions? All right, you guys ready to vote? So if you are, go ahead, and then Liz will come around. We have a cute little paper bag that we can put the ballots in,
And PricewaterhouseCoopers is doing the counting.
Yeah, PricewaterhouseCoopers is not doing the counting.
Who's the guy that does Academy Awards? Who's got it wrong? Warren Beatty.
Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, we have Warren Beatty and Steve Harvey.
Yeah.
They're going to announce the winners.
Man, you got an A-team there. A-team.
Hey, Josh.
That's all you need to do is
And everybody vote?
What's that?
Do you need Terrence to supervise your counting?
One of my clients is
Eric,
PricewaterhouseCoopers.
why don't you go supervise the counting with Liz? Come on. You're the project manager for campus placemaking.
Yeah, I'm in politics. I count twice.
While they're doing that, let's keep going. So, parking transportation management study presentation.
Just take us a second to get set up.
You bet.
Liz, did you?
I'm not thinking.
I need Liz to log back on.
We need you.
Was that Liz?
Liz is counting right now. I'll take her place counting, and you'll.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, I think she's probably the only person who knows.
Who can run the laptop? I think it's her laptop.
No, Liz's laptop is a MacBook. Might be a city laptop.
Yeah.
I was counting.
All right. You all hear me okay? Am I close enough? All right.
So before you start, not to keep everybody in suspense, it was a thoughtful vote by the committee, but Ms. Hayes, you are the CAC's representative. John, thank you for putting in your name, but it was, you guys clearly, it was good. So there you go. Okay, you can now start.
Good to move forward? Okay. Well, thank you all for having us here tonight to talk with you about the National Western Center Parking and Transportation Demand Management Study. My name is Chris Proud. I am transportation planner working with NWC-CAC with the city. And with that,
I'm Beth Bolsing. My firm is called OB Consulting, and we're one of the consultants working on our project.
So we're here to explain to you, this is sort of the first time that we've met with this group, at least to talk about the parking and TDM study that's happening on the campus, give you some background information, but we also want to engage you a little bit too and sort of ask you some questions, or at least try and get some feedback from you tonight, so we've saved a bit of time at the end of the presentation for that. So I'll go through some background. I believe that Kelly, if I can advance, yeah, that Kelly's talked with you, at least introduced you to the topic of this study in the past. That this study is starting. We're in the very early stages of the parking and TDM study, and this is really building out of the master plan process. But as far as our agenda is concerned, what I wanted to talk with you about tonight, give you a bit of context, background, how we got to this place, what this study is really about, talk with you about our project organization as a team, how we're set up, what our guiding principles are, the things that sort of keep us on the right track as far as the team is concerned, and then also really explain parking, what we mean by transportation demand management, or TDM, and then also how we're going to organize some of the recommendations that maybe come out of this study, because it's a little complex. And then finally talk with you about our process, what our schedule is, and really how you as an organization and other stakeholders really fit into the overall process as well. So, and then, like I said, we'll save some time to get some feedback from all of you also. So, the podium's a little awkward, I apologize, but the slide that you've got here, really the National Western Center Parking and TDM study at its core, what we're doing is looking at parking needs and what we call transportation demand management. And the parking needs and demand for the National Western campus are going to change over time. They're very different today as to what they might be as different phases of the National Western develop out over time. So what we, I can't quite see what's on this slide. Can I borrow your freehand mic?
Yes, of course.
That'd be much easier. Thank you. I can't read what's on the screen. Sorry, I'm a little blind. Advanced for me. This is much easier because I can actually read it and I can pull it. So as I was saying, for the study itself, we're looking at parking and parking demand on the site over time, as well as what we call transportation demand management. And what we mean by that is it's sort of a variety of different policies and programs that really influence the way that people travel to, from, and through the National Western campus. And that's really what this is all about. On the graphic that you see up here, you sort of see the National Western in the center here. That really is the study area for the work that we're doing, but we have a much larger area of influence as well that goes out into many of the different neighborhoods. The recommendations that we make, though, at the end of the day will be for the campus proper, and then maybe some additional regional recommendations as well. But some of the things that we're looking to get out of the study, as we sort of talked about it and scoped this out initially, is building partnerships and stakeholder support, and that's one of the reasons that we're here tonight. Encouraging multimodal access. What we mean by that is trying to, again, get people in a variety of different ways to, from, and through the campus, depending on the kind of event that we've got going. We need to meet the needs of those special events. There's just a whole host of things that are happening and will be happening on the National Western over time, and we need to make sure that we meet the needs for people to get to and from the site. To do that, we want to keep considering this regional approach. As you know, the National Western Stock Show uses some remote parking, course field. We want to look at some of those things as well because we want to make sure we're balancing appropriately the needs of parking on the site versus what we can trade off and maybe use in parts of the region as well, which is why our study area is so large. We also want to capitalize on new infrastructure like the commuter rail that's coming into the site. We want to make sure we're using that to the best of our abilities, as well as adapting with change as the National Western builds out over time. So, again, that's the study. This is our team, essentially. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of information just so that you understand sort of those lines of communication, who we're working with. The box at the top might be a little tough to see, but I'm in the project manager box up there for the city. We have a consultant team that's led by Walker Parking, and Walker, they're experts at doing exactly this kind of analysis. They also understand some of the unique aspects of the things we're doing here at National Western. Done a fair amount of work for Calgary Stampede up in Canada, and they also worked on the master plan a little bit as well. But then we have different areas, and Beth in the center there is leading the outreach and engagement. We have the parking analysis and engineer, which is mostly Walker Parking. And then on the transportation demand management side, so again, those programs to sort of influence how people move to and from the site, we've engaged with Fair & Peers, which is another consulting firm that has expertise in that area. So what also kind of feeds into this, that's very important to our project team, is our what we call our project management team. And it's more than just that org chart that you just saw. There really is a whole host of people from various departments within the city, including, again, different city departments, as well as some outside agencies as well, like the National Western Stock Show Association, Dr. Cogger, Denver Regional Council of Governments, CSU is also represented there, etc. So we use that group to really help us guide the study. And we've met with them just a couple times really to kick them off. And hopefully very soon we'll really be moving into the meat of the study. With that team, that project management team, we created some guiding principles for the study. And I won't cover all of this, and we'll make sure that this presentation is available to all of you so you can look at it in a bit more detail. But I'll hit the highlights here. We sort of organized it by 3 key areas. One is site access, then parking infrastructure management policy, and then finally that transportation demand management piece. And on the site access, it really is about, on a day-to-day basis, how do we get people to the site? How do we move them through the site? How do we make sure that that's an enjoyable experience as well as far as mobility is concerned? On the parking infrastructure side, we really want this project to be successful. So how do we make sure that we can accommodate growth in attendance and special events and other things that are happening? So that's really an important key piece, that the infrastructure that we suggest and that goes into this next phase of the master plan or the placemaking study really represents what the demand and the needs are going to be in the future. And then finally, on the transportation demand management side, this is kind of a multifaceted approach, really, looking at not only parking. Parking is a critical piece because we know that there's a certain number of people that will need to park and drive to the site. But then there's a whole other group of people that we think we may be able to influence in some way or another to make sure we're taking full advantage of that transit, of cycling, of walking, of connections, of people who live in the neighborhood and connecting to the amenities on the site as well. So that gives us just a sense of those guiding principles. So when it comes to parking and TDM, I think, I kind of just said it, but we want to be clear that it's not, parking is a critical issue, and there's certainly a demand that's going to need to be addressed based on the kinds of events that we have out there. But we're also trying to balance that with other options for people to get to the site. And that's really what TDM is about as well, making sure that those options exist for people in a realistic way to take transit or to move to the site either on a bike or via car share and other means. But really that's, the core of the study is looking at that parking, but also looking at the transportation demand management piece. So it's about moving people, not just cars. I mean, that's really what we're thinking. We know we have to address, the needs for each of the users on the site, particularly over the course of the different kinds of events that we're going to have out there. And they may have very different needs, and that's okay. We want to make sure that this is flexible enough to address that. I mentioned that it's a little complex in how we maybe pull all of these recommendations together. So we kind of had to create some bookends for this and think about, I'll sort of start at the top. We created this matrix of how we will likely present whatever recommendations come out of this study. And we thought we'd look at, really sort of large event down to sort of more the day-to-day type of an event, and thinking that everything else sort of would fall in between those. So Stock Show Weekend, that's clearly one of the largest events that's happening out there, and that really is that large bookend for us. Then thinking about just a general large event, a concert, a festival, or things that might be happening concurrently out there. And then finally a typical day, people going to do research or work at CSU, for example, or going to the National Western Center office for that matter. We want to make sure, again, that those types of events we're capturing at least a good range of things. Then we'll start to organize our recommendations by sort of the different time frames, because what's going to happen prior to any real construction being done is probably very different than full build out. So we need to look at it in this way as well. So pre-construction might be the next 3-4 years or so, and so we'll have recommendations for each of these kinds of events there. Then phase 1 and 2 construction, which is funded, we'll give some recommendations there for things happening during construction, because that's going to be very different than once that phase 1 and 2 become operational. So we have some separate recommendations for them. And then finally, full build out the future phases. So we had to get our arms around this and try and organize it in some reasonable fashion. So this is our schedule or our process chart. I think probably the most important is sort of to focus on the large boxes at the top, because those are our project's major milestones. And we started here with inception. We've got some dates at the bottom here. This is about a 9-month schedule, 9-10-month schedule, I would say. This inception piece was really getting ourselves internally as a team just coordinated and together and knowing exactly how we wanted to move forward. At this point in sort of the April timeframe or March timeframe, we're in the context phase, which is a lot of background research and really, National Western Stock Show has been great about giving us a lot of data, making sure we understand really how their events work and also the Coliseum and others. So we've really been looking at that data and trying to figure out what's that baseline. The next piece we'll go in is to demand. So what kind of parking demand exists both now and in the future. as well as what are the kinds of TDM or transportation demand management opportunities that actually exist. So that'll be that demand piece, and that'll come in sort of the April-May timeframe. Then once we know that demand and what those opportunities are, we can start to match that up with whatever kind of what we call infrastructure. So maybe it's parking facilities, it's programs that help. For example, I mean, it's possible that within a ticket to a concert, we could include something like a free RTD pass, that not necessarily free, but included in that price. And that could encourage people to take RTD versus necessarily drive unless they had to. So it's things like that. Those are sort of those strategies, and then also more physical infrastructure like parking facilities that we would need to identify. With that, we define our plans, we figure out how it really works within the phasing of National Western, and then we figure out really how to deliver it. That's sort of the last piece. And along those lines, we've got sort of in this area really talking about Beth's area, which is engagement. And we have that project management team that's meeting at each of those major milestones, as well as just engaging with, on a regular basis with the CAC and other groups. And we're also looking at some public meeting, likely around this infrastructure and strategy stage, because that's where we really feel like we'll have something meaningful to receive feedback from other stakeholders, general public, at that point. But the idea is to have ongoing communications and meetings with the PMT throughout. So I know that's a lot of information, and I've tried to go through it to be as succinct as possible. We just have a lot that's been going on. But we were hoping to get a little bit from you, and I am going to throw it over to Beth, but really, you all have been through the master planning process, and you think about this all the time. So we're wondering what ideas you had, or if there's any pent-up ideas that you were thinking of, access to the site, transportation demand management, good policies around transit that might encourage people, parking, some of those challenges or issues.
So I might just add that, I might just add that, really loud noise, it's okay. But I might add that, I know you guys talked about this a lot during the master planning process. You talked about it during the neighborhood planning process. And there are undoubtedly concerns on the part of everyone in the neighborhood about the parking issue. And so, we do have an ongoing project management team, and Ann sits on that. We're wrestling with a lot of issues as we go forward, but this is a great opportunity to hear directly from you. What are some of the things you want us to think about? Yeah.
So what kind of opportunities for public comment are there during this process? I just learned today Ann is on that team.
Yeah, so this is, to be honest, this is a pretty technical study. Calculating all this demand for parking and where it has to be on site and how it works is definitely, that's why walker parking is the lead. It has a very technical nature to it. But we are trying to supplement that with getting out to the community. And so right now, the first step in that is to get the website. So we just launched a website, and so we have information there on the study, and we have a comment form, and that's step one.
So Beth, I understand the technical nature of it, but you're going to be making decisions about what's built, and they're big decisions. And what opportunities does the public have? Are you going to unveil, you get to a certain point where, I don't know, it's conceptual design or schematic design or something. You're going to build structures, I assume. So what is the public opportunity to comment and understand before the train's already left the station?
One thing to understand, I just want to make sure it's clear on the recommendations that will come out of this are going to have to be taken forward in the placemaking study as well. So it's likely the kinds of recommendations that we create will be, we know we need X demand of parking to address the needs of the campus going forward. In addition to that, we would recommend a variety of different transportation demand management programs. As far as the actual location of that parking, we may make some recommendations about, it should be in the north of I-70, south of I-70, maybe in quadrants on the campus. But I think it's the placemaking study's ultimate layout that will dictate exactly where that parking will go. So we'll give them some parameters because we know parking will need to be in certain quadrants of the campus as well, just so that that's clear.
Okay, so you're not going to make decisions about, say, access and location of parking and number of spaces, and whether it's structured or surface? Or...
Our recommendations will be about number of parking, so that's true, that we believe that based on the demand analysis that we do, that we think X number of spaces is needed to generally accommodate the majority of events that happen out there. And then if that is exceeded by what we can accommodate on site, then we're going to try and look at some of these regional approaches that we mentioned as well, like Force Field, and I know some of those properties are changing already. But what other opportunities exist? There's a lot of parking resources being built in the River North area right now around developments. And we're thinking, are there opportunities to capitalize on that a little bit too? So those are all things we'll be looking at from a public perspective. Part of it is also working with groups like yourself to make sure that we're conveying each of those milestones as we go along what's happening and have opportunity for that feedback, as well as obtaining that feedback online. Or again, there's sort of a public process or public meeting that we're looking at and having once we have something for people to really respond to as well.
Okay, that's good, and it's good you're integrating it into the public realm studies, but I just wanted some kind of assurance before major decisions are made, there is an opportunity for public discussion.
Maybe it's fair.
Can I make a comment? Because you mentioned I was on it, and I just want to...
What is it exactly that you're on? The title?
It's a technical committee, and I just want to be clear with everyone, the reason why I'm on that is for my project.
Yeah.
So, we're building a lot of square footage, we're part of the problem of the general, kind of mobility in that area. We also may be part of the solution with the parking that we're delivering to the site. And so we have to do our own traffic studies, and all of this gets integrated. We're so close by the National Western Center, we're probably going to be the closest private development that would have a bank of parking that could be used for the National Western. And we also are part of the path of walking to the 38th and Blake commuter rail station. So the placemaking we do is very important to this TDM concept because it's really both stations that are going to service the National Western. I just want to be clear, everyone knew why I was on the technical committee.
What's your cross street on Brighton at your project?
We are at, we're between 40th and 43rd on the east side of Brighton.
Yes.
Well, I'm concerned a little bit in reference to the connectivity to the neighborhood areas there. Because, we're talking about increasing the capacity of this place to handle over 1 million people. And as I look at I just picture 51st coming across there with cars parked on both sides of that street all the way down to Washington. And in the same situation over in Elyria, Swansea area, people, not being able to park there. I see a lot of that, looking in my mind, just seeing some of the events that take place around here, how it's going to affect it. So I think a lot of this needs to be taken into account through this study. The other part of my concern is, you said you want this to be an enjoyable experience for the people that are visiting here. If you're going to build a place here that's going to accommodate over 1 million visitors coming just to see the show, I look at it from a participant standpoint that's going to increase substantially too. And we talked about this during the planning, for this whole situation. And my concern is that looking at some of the things that you guys have been putting together on the development of the site, I don't see it accommodating, the participants and the services and everything else that's going to be coming in here. And I hear you talking about the people that are becoming, but I don't hear you addressing a lot of that.
So it's a good point, and something that we will address as part of the study. That whole kind of back of house as well, and things that are happening. And we sort of always use Stock Show maybe as, because it is the biggest event that's out there today. It's one of the things that we look at because they operate also very uniquely by comparison to, say, the concert or something like that as well. But we are trying to work with Stock Show, with other kinds of event promoters and providers to understand exactly how they function and work, to make sure that not only attendees are appropriately taken care of, that folks that might be putting on the events or actually just a part of the event also are taken care of and aren't necessarily impacting the surrounding neighborhoods as well, because we know that that's a critical piece. The idea is to make sure that we're taking care of the mobility needs for the campus itself, whether they're on the physical campus or maybe at some remote sites. We want to make sure that's an important part of it.
Yeah, and since the time of the master plan, the last 2 years during the stock show, we've collected a significant amount of data about what are the travel movements, where is parking occurring, what are the numbers, who's using the bus, how many heads and bikes are out there. So there's been a lot of data collected as well to inform that piece of it.
My question is, will this be done in partnership with traffic engineering to create some sort of boundary for the neighborhood, or you would essentially be putting, for traffic engineering would be coming out and doing signage that says local traffic only or no trucks over this size, to create like a bubble that National Western operates in? That way traffic doesn't flow into the community in a legal way.
It's a good point. We haven't, certainly because we are so early in the study, we haven't tackled those kinds of questions yet, but it's clear those are things that we heard both through the master planning phase and just subsequently. I mean, when we go out and talk with people about parking, that's the biggest concern, that somehow it's going to impact the neighborhood. So we need to be thinking about mechanisms to take care of that. Whether it's sort of exactly what you're laying out, I don't know that I can answer that right now, but it's an important one.
I mean, Kenny had Ride Fest. There's smoke all over the place, and it's fine, it's legal, I understand that. But when you can't take your friends over to the park, you have to buy it, because you can't control the traffic, because the park doesn't come on, walk over here. It'd be nice to be able to be fluid in this design, where you obviously can't control all parking, encourage people to park in certain designated areas, especially if they're coming from out of the city.
That's a fair point.
Like maybe a couple ways in, a couple ways out, but not a lot of entry points, because we wouldn't want people driving around the neighborhoods. We wouldn't want them even to venture into the neighborhoods looking for parking.
Yeah, well, and it's a big piece of that, wayfinding, signage, and availability of parking is a big component, because then you really are minimizing driving. If they're driving to site, like to the area, they're driving directly there, and they're parking, and they're not circling.
Right. And I'll just point out that sort of the purpose of the transportation demand management piece of all of this too is that, are there a segment of people attending a concert or whatever it might be that we can get to not bring a car there in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a lot of what we're trying to look at. And as I said, it really depends on the event. I mean, there are folks that will need to, drive to the stock show. And we understand that, and we'll need to figure out how that gets accommodated. But a lot of the other events that are happening there, I think the hope is that we have more opportunities to influence people to do things differently. And even with stock show as well, I wouldn't hold that out.
John had his hand up. Why don't you get that side, John had his hand up.
Go ahead.
You're okay.
But I don't have any real concerns in any real negative impacts, because I think there'll be enough time to be alerted and get on those. Okay. I have enough confidence that we can do that. Working with whoever, you or whoever else, our representatives on that parking committee. One of the things that I'm thinking about is some community benefits. And I would like for you to, I know you're dealing with parking, but there ought to be a sliver of some community benefits and possibly some, for lack of a better term, mini economic opportunity. I go by the Pepsi Center and I see vendors out there. And they're small individuals probably. They may be working for a large company, but they got their little trinket stands out there and whatever, you know. And that's a big parking thing down there. It's huge. I don't know comparison to what would be here, but I know it's a nightmare down there sometimes. Hopefully you'll include at least a little sliver in your study there about possibilities, community benefits and economic
So I'm just going to do a real quick dump of a few ideas that have floated through this process, going back to the discussions. It sounds like that's kind of what you're trying to bring to the foreground. And some of it will tie into some things a couple people just said. And some things I've heard in talking with people out there, because this whole wayfaring thing came up in Globeville too, and when the neighborhood plan, so it's really critical. A concern I've heard expressed is that that the neighborhood not ending up having to have permitting to park in their own neighborhood as a side effect of this. The free form would be good. Numerous times throughout the master planning process with the parking, the idea has come up with inventorying throughout the city the structures that could take on some of the load, and you're talking about that a little bit when you're talking about the new structures in Rhino, and I think it's on the table, but I feel any time it would be great for the city to come up with a comprehensive inventory and a map of all the parking structures in the city that would have spaces at any time, and then incentives and programs and contracts can be developed over the next 2 years to really get that going with the businesses and the firms that own those parking structures. I really think that's got huge potential. Third, RTD sponsorships. There's one idea that I think is very interesting. It kind of ties into the sustainability arena. Could different firms and groups sponsor different numbers of RTD tickets for the National Western Center, and those could be attached to even some of the businesses on the interior of the neighborhoods could, maybe get some marketing out of it. A really good idea that there's actually a little group of us kicking it around is there a way with OED or some kind of this has to do with some benefits. There are a few people in the neighborhoods over here that are Lyft drivers or Uber drivers. And I can tell you 10 people, if they could get their vehicle upgraded, they'd be very interested in being Lyft. And I think it would be fantastic if there was an OED project in the 80216 zip code that would help people bring their cars up to code. And I would love for the National Western NWC to have a fleet brand that would employ people. We'd probably get 50 drivers within 3 years that would want to, from within the neighborhood. Where does Dr. CAC come into this? And then I agree with, we don't want people driving through the neighborhoods with looking for parking. I also don't want to neglect the businesses that are here now and coming on the interior of the neighborhoods that are walkable from the National Western Center, so that can be part of, and that could be some of the incentives, that are going on. So anyway, those are just some ideas especially the parking inventory around the city, as how can that absorb some of it.
That's really helpful.
That's great.
Armando,
Yeah, just real quick, I think you're already addressing your question, and Elizabeth, number 5, it says right-size parking.
Armando, could you use the microphone? And I can't hear you.
I think that the group is already addressing your question when it says right-size parking with TDM interventions. And I think what they mean by that statement, correct me if I'm wrong on that, they have vehicles coming in dropping off livestock. It's only temporary. They're large vehicles. They drop it off. They move off the site. They're bringing small vehicles here, so they'll drop off and they move off the site. So when we talk about right-sized parking, I think that's what you get to is addressing some of our issues here. But I think it needs to be expanded more. The community participating in that in terms of some Uber stuff. I know there's some small types of transportation taking place. Like it's a hybrid of India. We have these small scooters that have multiple people in and drop them on. So I think you guys are addressing those issues. From my perspective, what I see what you do.
we need to mull them around, definitely.
Yeah, that's all part of the overall strategy, which has yet to come together.
All right, Katie.
Are there some of the larger mobility citywide goals that can be influenced since the site is so big? So some of the ones that come to my mind are the goal for zero traffic deaths, so Vision Zero, or I don't remember the exact numbers, but reducing single occupancy vehicles, there's a citywide goal about that.
Yeah.
Some climate-related goals. Are there really concrete ways that this site can influence helping us get there on those?
I think certainly there's opportunity there, because that's, you know, the idea that, you know, as this grows, there's going to be more demand if we don't sort of introduce other options for people, that it creates a fair amount of gridlock. So the Vision Zero piece is something that's citywide, so that would automatically apply across the board. The same for what we call mode shift, so basically just, you know, trying to shift those people that we can from driving to using other means to get there. So I think all of that sort of goes to meeting those goals.
And it's to look, you know, at all of those strategies and technologies and where those front doors on site are and where we can try to bring people in beyond just coming in the hall.
Yeah. Sorry.
Awesome.
No, I would just add that the National Western Master Plan also has greenhouse gas emissions goals and things like that that go along with the city's sustainability goals. Those are kind of paired and would be good to, obviously you're keeping those in mind.
Right, and as the placemaking comes in, the parking and the TDM strategies and the placemaking on site all have to kind of work together.
All right, other questions? We have two more issues that are pretty significant, or at least we want to hear from Anna. So any other questions on this issue?
Okay, great. You guys, thank you very much for all your input, and we'll be back in touch then when we get the public meetings scheduled for this summer sometime.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Eric. The poop pipe. That's what it is.
What's what?
The poop pipe.
Oh, jeez.
We can't use that.
That's what it is.
Yeah, we can't use that. I agree with Liz.
Dirty water.
Dirty water, yeah. Soiled water.
The potential resource pipe. Keep covering. Right here, you can use, do you want to use the?
I think this will work.
Okay.
I won't be able to stray very far, but I think this should work.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric Shaffrin. I'm a project manager with the National Office of the National Western Center with the city. And I'm here to talk about a study that we are doing. This is a feasibility study, a preliminary feasibility study of a few things related to the riverfront, the development along the riverfront, the development of riverfront open space to re-engage the river. And the study actually is called, it's a great name, the Delgany Interceptor and South Platte River Open Space Study. So the master plan addresses the river on a number of fronts. One of the 9 guiding principles of the master plan is engage the river in nature, and there's a lot of language within the master plan about exactly what that means. What does it mean to engage the river? We know that we want to create campus-wide connections to the river and the natural areas that have existed there for a long time but are currently inaccessible. We know that we want to bring on-site stormwater treatment and green infrastructure to the campus so that the water that flows into the river is cleaner than the water that is currently flowing into the river. We know we want to improve the habitat and bring back native species that have long since been absent, create links to the new park or the redevelopment of Heron Pond and Northside Park across the river. We have goals for net zero energy, waste, and water. How could we potentially be using the riverfront open space to further those goals? And watershed, water resources, education, and research. So is there opportunity to bring education and research to this part of the river that has really been inaccessible for a very long time? So within the master plan, we have the renderings that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And here's a view looking to the east from above the river, and you can see this riverfront open space running through the center of the campus is National Western Drive. So we're looking at the space that's between National Western Drive and the river. But one of the challenges that we have with achieving the vision that's in the master plan is the Delgany Interceptor pipes. For those not familiar with them, there are 2 wastewater pipes that run through that open space, a 72-inch and a 78-inch pipe, and they run above ground. And they present challenges for achieving the vision that is in the master plan. Here's a view looking across the river, looking to the east, and you can see the pipes that run pretty close to the river. They're about 17 feet above the water surface, and they're in some cases 20 or 30 feet away from the river itself. So topographically, the location of those pipes and their existence above grade presents real challenges with enabling the sort of redevelopment and reclamation of this riverfront open space that we would like to achieve. The master plan addresses the pipes very simply. We determined that we did not have the budget to move those pipes. So the treatment of those pipes is by leaving them in place. And in this rendering, what you see here is them actually being covered over with dirt, native grasses being installed to the east of those pipes, and that's National Western Drive on the right side. Or we could leave them in place, and if you've got pipes, you might as well paint them red. So use them eventually as public art or something to focus on. But the master plan assumes that those pipes remain in place. We do not have the budget in the project budget to relocate those pipes. While we have the net zero goals for energy, waste, and water, and they're aspirational, the project budget contemplates traditional building systems. So when it comes to our net zero effort, those pipes, which I'll talk about in a minute, present for tremendous opportunity for heat capture from those pipes and use that heat to heat our campus, but those sorts of systems are not contemplated in the master plan. So the purpose of this study is really threefold. We're looking at three different things. Number one, we're looking at the engineering feasibility of relocating those pipes. From a hydraulic perspective, from a technical perspective, can we move those pipes and still meet the needs and requirements of the owner of those pipes, which is the Metro Wastewater Reclamation District? And some of those requirements are we need to make sure that they can maintain operational access for maintenance of those pipes. They need to continue to be gravity fed. Currently, all of the wastewater flows through them without any assistance, and we need to ensure that that can continue to happen, so no pumps. So we're looking at the technical feasibility of moving it and understanding where could we potentially move these pipes to. The second thing we're looking at is a sewer heat recovery screening analysis. So sewer heat recovery, it's a technology that's actually pretty simple. There's a lot of heat in those pipes, and we would capture that heat and use that heat to heat our buildings. So it's not necessarily free energy because you have to build the systems to capture that heat, but it provides a tremendously low-cost opportunity for heating our buildings. From the perspective of our net zero goals, it's capturing heat that is already in the system and is currently causing ecological damage or ecological challenges to the river. So it's an opportunity to restore the habitat of the river. So it serves a lot of purposes. So we're looking at the feasibility of exploring sewer heat recovery on this stretch of the pipes. And then lastly is if we were to move the pipes or if we leave the pipes in place, what are our opportunities for achieving the vision from the master plan for the redevelopment of that riverfront open space? With all the goals that we have for bringing open space and park areas to the river, how can we, or how do each one of the various opportunities for where we could put the pipes impact our ability to achieve that vision? So who is conducting this work? So we have the Office of the National Western Center and Public Works are leading the study in collaboration with Metro Wastewater Reclamation District, the owners of those pipes. And we've hired a consultant team that's led by AECOM and Civitas, who we have a few representatives from our team in the back. Civitas is running the analysis of the riverfront options. So from a landscaping perspective and topographical perspective, what are our opportunities? And then from a stakeholder perspective, who do we have involved in this project? So we have a project management team that is comprised of representatives from the city and from Metro. And then we have three technical teams. One technical team is looking at the sanitary and sewer heat recovery, so looking at the engineering feasibility of moving the pipes and the engineering feasibility of sewer heat recovery. We have a riverfront planning team that is looking from the planning perspective. What are the impacts on the riverfront from moving these pipes, and what do we want what do we want to get out of this study from a preliminary perspective? This is not a design study, but really an analysis of programmatic opportunities. And then last is procurement strategy, because we don't have the money in the budget to pay for moving the pipes or to pay for sewer heat recovery. What types of creative ways can we explore for potentially getting other people to pay for moving these pipes, if there's a business case to be made, or other opportunities, frankly, for getting this done. So we have a team of experts that's helping us with that. And then lastly, we have the community partners. So this is a group of stakeholders, folks that are interested, that have specific interest in riverfront, some that potentially could help us pay for the riverfront improvements or pay for moving these pipes. The CAC is one of those community partners. We had a community partners meeting 2 weeks ago with the other members of the community partners, and now bringing the same information to the CAC for your discussion. So the decision-making process, so what decisions are going to be made out of this study? So where are we? We're about halfway through the study. We have not quite completed our feasibility study, but we're close. Our goal is at the next CAC, we can bring the evaluation criteria, so the methodology that we're using to evaluate different riverfront alternatives and different alignments of those pipes, to the CAC for discussion. Once we complete the study, develop recommendations for an alignment of the pipe that meets Metro's needs and has their approval. We bring that alignment recommendation to the BOC for approval, and then from there, after their approval, we then feed the recommendations from that into the campus placemaking study. So I'm going to walk through the 3 parts of this study relatively quickly. It's a lot of information, and I will try to get through it without boring folks too much. So what are we looking at on the engineering feasibility, and what have we determined? So number 1, we're analyzing the constraints about moving the pipes. So number 1, we cannot, none of the alignments, potential alignments of the pipes can create a rise in the 100-year floodplain. So we are committed to ensuring that anything that we do along the riverfront is not going to raise the level of the 100-year floodplain. If any of the alternatives do produce that situation, then that is a fatal flaw, and that particular alignment or that scenario is not viable, and it is stricken from the list. Number 2, we have to make sure that we meet Metro's requirements for maintenance access and their design requirements. They build these pipes all the time. We have to make sure that any recommendation we come up with is one that meets their requirements. We have to make sure that existing features of the Delgany, specific ones, are met. We have a tie-in point at the north that we have to tie the pipe into, and we have a tie-in point at the south. So between point A at the south and point B at the north, that is the area of flexibility we have for moving the pipes to the east. But we have to make sure that we tie in at those 2 points. And then lastly, from a master plan perspective, we have to make sure that any of the alignments don't foreclose our opportunity to achieve certain aspects or certain desires or programmatic requirements of the master plan. And we have to ensure that we don't conflict with any buried utilities that are going to be needed with the future plan. So where are we in the study of the hydraulics, of the engineering feasibility? So we have completed our analysis of the existing pipes, so we have a very clear understanding of what the capacity and constraints are with the existing pipes, and we know that we know that any scenario that we're looking at, we can achieve the capacity requirements for Metro. In looking at the new alignments, we have completed our initial calculations, and we actually have determined that there's really no constraint about how far east we move these pipes. We could potentially move them all the way to the east to the existing BNSF lines without compromising the ability of those pipes to serve their primary purpose, which is a very good result. From a structural integrity perspective, we've just launched the analysis of structure, and we will be doing the hydraulic modeling of the South Platte River. So ensuring that no rise guarantee, we are modeling the impact of the various alignments on the floodplain so that we know if any of them cause a rise in that 100-year that would exclude them from being considered. So on the sewer recovery side, so this is kind of a quick primer on what sewer heat recovery is. So it starts with the natural gas that we extract up in Weld County, and that natural gas flows to our houses and is used in our hot water heaters, where it is burned to heat the water. That hot water feeds our washing machines, our dishwashers, and our showers. The water that comes from those activities ends up in the sewer. And from there, what we're proposing is we take that heat back out of the water before it goes up to the wastewater treatment facility, and we use that heat that's in that water to heat our campus. So it's pretty straightforward, and the net result of it is we have a warm campus during the winter, and the water that flows into the river is cooler than it would have been otherwise, which is a primary goal of Metro Wastewater. So the opportunities, we're about halfway through the study, as I mentioned, and so the opportunities that we're seeing for sewer heat recovery are actually pretty fantastic. Number one, it helps Metro with their thermal pollution discharges. So the water they're releasing back into the river is currently 4 degrees centigrade too warm, and this will help cool that water before it goes into the river. Because the Delgany interceptors run right through the middle of our campus, the opportunity to use that heat right on site is tremendous. It doesn't need to be transported a couple miles away. It can be used right there, which has huge operational efficiencies. There is enough supply in those pipes to heat the entirety of the campus and potentially beyond. So we're looking at least 2 million square feet of occupied space within the campus, and we think that there's enough heat in the pipes to serve the needs of that campus and potentially beyond. Another opportunity is that we're very early in the planning process. We're not looking at this late. We're looking at this before we've even begun contemplating infrastructure for the campus, so we're right on schedule. The challenges that we see is we have to make sure that a footprint for a system works within the master plan. So if this required a 100,000 square foot building, that might be a challenge. Luckily, a typical sewer heat recovery system is about the size of an RV. So we know that we're pretty sure at this point that we will be able to accommodate it on campus if it is feasible. And we have to make sure, obviously, that there's early coordination with the infrastructure development. And then lastly, and probably at this point most importantly, we have to figure out how we can finance it. And that's a challenge right now that we have not figured out. So what are our next steps? So it looks very promising. We have to complete the thermal supply and demand analysis. So we have to finish running the numbers so that we can hone in on exactly what the opportunity is, both on the supply side and the demand side, so the sources and the uses of that heat. We have to analyze the various options. There are different sewer heat recovery systems that are available, and we have to figure out which is the one that makes the most sense in this situation. We have to analyze the costs, understand the life cycle costs associated with it, and develop the business case to see if there is an opportunity to pursue other modes of paying for this. So lastly, on the riverfront. So the goal of our riverfront analysis is to understand the impact of potential relocation of the Delgany or in situ alternatives on our ability to create the open space that is identified within the master plan for the National Western Campus. And what we have settled on are a series of potential alignments of the interceptor and associated riverfront improvement alternatives. So we've come up with 5 different alignments of the pipe, and those 5 alignments have produced 5 different alternatives for redevelopment of the riverfront. Now the images that I'm going to show you are not design. The design is going to happen after campus placemaking. The purpose of the images that we have within this deck is really to illustrate the challenges and the opportunities associated with each of the riverfront alternatives. They're not intended to be prescriptive at all. So the alignment A is keeping the pipes where they are, and in keeping the pipes where they are, we have come up with 3 different alternatives for the redevelopment of the riverfront. Alignment B is moving the pipes slightly to the east, but still within the open space, and that produced alternative number 4 for the riverfront. Alignment C is moving the pipes underneath National Western Drive. Alignment D is moving the pipes through the future stockyards, and alignment E is moving the pipes farther to the east, adjacent to the future rail corridor. Alignment C, D, and E all have the same impact on the riverfront. In all 3 of those alignments, we've moved the pipes off the riverfront, so it essentially produces the same opportunity for riverfront development because the pipes are no longer an impediment. So how are we evaluating these? And this is what we'll bring back to you at the next CAC for your feedback. Number 1, fatal flaw analysis. So I talked about floodplain. We have to ensure that it causes no rise in the 100-year. We have to ensure that Metro can achieve the access that they need. Obviously, if anything is exorbitantly expensive, that could be cost prohibitive, and that could be an elimination possibility. And then lastly, are there any general feasibility concerns that we have about the riverfront alternative? Conformance with the master plan. So we have to ensure that that the alternatives provided enable us to achieve the programmatic goals of the master plan, the water quality needs of the master plan. We have to understand the landscape impacts, and are the landscape impacts in line with what we desired in the master plan, and what other opportunities are there for program. And then lastly, visitor experience. Does it provide the access that we want for the visitors, for the patrons, for the neighborhood, safety and accessibility, habitat restoration, and odor control? So there are a couple that we've already identified. A couple of the alignments we've already identified have fatal flaws. Alignment A, Riverfront Alternative 3, which is where we essentially would berm over the existing pipes. What we discovered is if we were to berm over the pipes and follow the city's rules regarding how steep the banks could be on the other side, the dirt would actually end up in the river, and we can't impact the river, so Alternative 3 is eliminated. And Alternative 5, which is moving the pipes underneath or adjacent to the railroad, doesn't work either, because it would have to span a 200-foot-long bridge, and that would be exorbitantly expensive. So those two already have been eliminated. So that leaves us with three alignments and 3 alternatives. So Alternative 1 is leaving them in place and bridging over the pipes. And what you see here in the illustration is the challenge associated with bridging over the pipes is that 17-foot elevation gap between the surface of the water and the top of the pipes that I mentioned earlier. And what you can see in this cross-section is that in order to bridge over those pipes, to get people over to the other side of the river, you have to ramp up to the pipes from the east, and then find some way to ramp down on the other side, or in this case, what's proposed here is a skywalk, where you walk out over the pipes and then you end up out over the river, looking at the river, and that's the opportunity to engage the river. This potentially presents some tremendous cost because those sorts of skywalks are not cheap, but it would enable us to leave the pipes in place. Alternative 2 is leaving them in place but burying the pipes on the east side and flattening the surface to the east of the pipes. And in this situation, again, we still need to get people out over the river, so this also shows that skywalk, but you can see to the east of the pipes, it provides for more accessibility because it's flat, coming from National Western Drive at the east end and walking out to the pipes, and it's only at the pipes that you encounter the serious grade. What this also enables us to do is include the water quality ponds that are included in the master plan, provide the water quality to the east of the pipes, which is important. And the last one, Alternative 4, which is where we move the pipes into the open space. So not quite as far as National Western Drive, but maintaining them within the open space. The challenges in this one are how do we address water quality. So here you can see a series of terraced ponds that work their way down towards the river. That would be to the west of the pipes. And in profile, you can see that the ground is more terraced, and it's a little bit more gradual. The slopes are more gradual as you work from National Western Drive to the right or to the east down towards the riverbank, and it potentially provides for easy access down to the river. And then lastly is Riverfront Alternative 5, which is moving the pipes under National Western Drive, under the stockyards, or within the rail corridor. And so this is one where the pipes are now completely out of the open space. And in profile, you can see that the slope is very gradual, a lot more natural. The red line that you see there that has the hump towards the middle, that is the existing grade. And the new grade you can see is a lot more gradual. And you can see the pipes there buried to the east. In this situation. So what we're doing, what we're using these alternatives to study is what are the programmatic opportunities that exist within each of these alternatives. Do we have the opportunity to bring flat space that's adjacent to National Western Drive so that we can potentially put tents there during the stock show, or put tents there during an event in the summer, or provide for a soccer field during the rest of the year? Is there opportunity down at the river for habitat restoration, or is there opportunity for people to come down and actually touch the water and engage directly with the river? So we're looking at the opportunities within each one of these. At the end of this study, we will recommend an alignment, and the information that we collect from the study will then be fed into the campus placemaking study, where we will then refine the program and finalize the program for the riverfront, utilizing the information from this study and the campus placemaking team and feedback from the community. So as far as next steps for this study, we will complete our alternatives analysis. We have to run the evaluation process using the criteria that I listed previously and finalize our draft recommendations, and we'll bring those recommendations to CAC for discussion and for feedback. And that's it.
Questions?
Any questions?
Bert?
Yes,
I have a question and a comment. So my first question is, are you making the assumption, and do you have to make the assumption, that the two pipes are always just the two pipes? Or could you introduce new pipes as well, or additional pipes, and so the pipes become smaller, and maybe you can distribute them differently, and then they're smaller? Is that a possibility? So that's my question. And my comment is that I think the placemaking needs to be part of the decision making and not just to inform the placemaking team, because obviously if there are huge benefits to placemaking by having more of a flat approach to the river, some of the bridges you showed, which are performance venues, if there's economic value to that, then that should be part of the equation. Maybe you've already anticipated that, but that's my point.
So on the pipes themselves, the pipes are owned by Metro, so it's their decision about what we can or cannot do with those pipes. Through this process, we have determined that they could be downsized. So the 78-inch and the 72-inch could be downsized to two 60-inch pipes. We talked with them about potentially consolidating down to a single pipe, but by having two pipes, it provides them with a lot of operational flexibility. So if there's a problem with one of the pipes, they can divert flow into the second pipe and work on the first pipe without interrupting service.
I guess the question is, can you do three pipes?
Yeah, we could do three pipes. The more pipes, the more cost. So what we have arrived at from a cost perspective and a hydraulic perspective is two 60-inch pipes, which we think it's the most efficient, but it also provides Metro with the operational flexibility that they need. And then regarding your comment, the decisions are going to be primarily, almost entirely based on technical nature, meaning from an engineering perspective and from a cost perspective for the pipes themselves, which alignment is going to work the best for Metro, and also is going to work best for National Western Center. On the riverfront alternatives, and then on sewer heat recovery as well, no decisions are going to be made. On sewer heat recovery, it's purely we feed this information into a next stage of infrastructure development. On the riverfront alternatives, we may end up with a recommendation to bring two alternatives to campus placemaking for further study. I think the recommendation is going to be primarily around an alignment of the pipe that is mostly based on technical nature, but also based on the qualitative analysis of the riverfront alternatives. And what we think will end up happening is, we don't know for sure, what we think will end up happening is that there will be one or two riverfront alternatives that rise to the top that are clear winners, that are clearly better than the others for a whole host of reasons, both quantitative and qualitative, and those will end up being moved forward into campus placemaking. But I agree with you, the goal, campus placemaking is where program is decided. And so we don't want to foreclose on any program opportunities in this study. The goal is just to inform.
Vern?
Just real quick, on the heat recovery system, or heat recovery sewer system?
Armando, can we, Eric, can you, sorry.
Just real quick, on your heat sewer recovery system or why aren't you heating the parking lots? I mean, right there, if you heat the parking lots in the winter, you would melt all that snow, all the maintenance, all that would go away.
That is a great question. We're looking at that also. Snow melt. The snow melt system, operationally, there's huge potential. I mean, if we've talked with National Western about this. If the stockyards had a snow melt system and during the stock show they didn't have to plow snow or didn't have to salt the driveways, operationally, there would be a huge opportunity. You wouldn't have the damage, the ecological damage from salt, so you're spot on.
Vern?
I've got a few questions here. The first one is my understanding that the Delgany interceptors as they are now with all the development that has taken place through here, they're about maxed out. Okay, and you're saying you have two pipes that are located over on the east side of the river, all right? And then there's one on the west side of the river, okay? For every action, there's a reaction, okay? And I guess the concern that I have is once you've made the changes to this design and you have these pipes there, that's it. National Western is going to proceed the rest of the way on their project, and that's going to be that. And you haven't talked about the possibility of either making some modifications here to accommodate the future needs, since you're going to mess with these pipes. How come that hasn't been taken into account? Okay, so there's another question.
Can I answer that one first, Nora? Because I know I'll forget the questions if I wait. So there actually is a lot of excess capacity, so I'm not sure where you heard that, but the pipes, the existing pipes have a lot of excess capacity. What they do, the 72 and the 78 inch currently flow from there through a siphon that takes it underneath the wastewater, underneath the river, and then over to the west side where it travels up to the Height facility a mile and a half to the north. And the 72 and 78 inch are actually very oversized and have a lot of excess capacity. And the two 60 inch that Metro has proposed provide, from their perspective, with enough capacity to serve expansion and growth for the community for the foreseeable future. So Metro was being very conservative in their agreement to downsize to 60, because the hydraulics actually show that we could go down to, I think, 48 inch, and Metro said, we're good at 60, because that will ensure that we have enough capacity for the foreseeable future. So I think from a capacity perspective, we'll be okay.
All right, my next question is, I understand that we have a study going on with the Army Corps of Engineers. Based on that study, there has been discussion of the possibility of needing to widen the river, and there's a lot of things that have been done to make our river well. And based on that, once you guys have implemented your design and locked it in place, then if any of these studies come through that needs to widen the river, then it takes a lot away, and it affects more so everything on the west side of the river rather than, being equal. And so I guess, where do you stand in reference to that issue with the Army Corps of Engineers? Because we haven't heard anything I haven't heard anything that says that you have even had any discussions with them.
Yeah, we've been in conversations with them throughout. So a few things. So the Army Corps is studying the full stretch of the river from Confluence Park up to Adams County, and ours is just a 2,500 foot section of the river. So the limitations that the development that we pursue on the overall riverfront, on the overall river and the overall floodplain are relatively small. The goals that we have for habitat restoration are very much in line with the Army Corps study. So when it comes to when it comes to the potential ability for us to restore habitat along the river, we have similar goals to the Army Corps study. We're interested in providing opportunities for people to touch the river and visit the river, and also potentially restore habitat along the river. We're looking at the opportunity for boardwalk over wetlands. So those sorts of things, which are very similar to what the Army Corps is pursuing, are part of our study. And then the last thing I would say is that the National Western Center project it's funded, and ours is one that we know is going forward, and the Army Corps study is one that is going to continue. They'll be continuing to study and push their process forward for the next few years, but we don't have certainty of it happening. So what we have agreed on with the Army Corps study is that we are working collaboratively with them. Selena Klasowski, who's the project manager, is on our technical team, the Riverfront technical team, so she's involved in the process, as is the floodplain manager for the city, Jeremy Hamer. And we're in constant conversation with them, and at the end of the day, the recommendation that we put forward and the project, the improvements that National Western pursues will be considered existing conditions for the Army Corps study. And the hope is that it really won't have a material impact on their ability to achieve their goals at all. I mean, that's really our goal.
But it still goes back to the situation of, once it's in place, and they do decide to widen the river, all right, then they're not going to widen it on the National Western side. They're going to widen it on the west side of the river. Okay, and how that impacts, and it goes back to my statement that for every action, there's a reaction. So are we going to have to deal with the reaction of that because that you're focusing on one specific project and not looking at the overall?
So I can't speak to what they are or are not going to be able to do with the Army Corps study, and specifically the west side of the river. I believe there are constraints along the west side that may limit their ability to push west anyway, but I don't know enough about it. Our goal is to ensure that the improvements only enhance the river experience, and some of the options that you see here pull the banks back, which I believe is one of the primary goals of the Army Corps study. So I'm hoping that what we're doing is actually pretty consistent with their overall plan.
So I guess going forward, will you be able to provide with us information from the Army Corps study in conjunction with this project?
So I cannot, because I'm not on that team, but what I can do is talk with the folks that are involved in that project, and I know that they have a pretty robust public engagement process, and I can find out what their schedule is for public engagement, and I can send that to you, and you could engage directly with them, because I'm not involved in their study, and I don't know what their schedule is. But I can certainly talk to Selena and find out, and put you in contact with Selena, because she'd be the best person to talk to about their process.
Should we have the Army Corps
Sure.
Very quickly, Eric?
Yes.
How old is the Dalgalian plan?
It's a good question. I want to say it's from the one of the pipes is older than the other. The west pipe is older than the other, and the east pipe, what I believe, was built in the mid-90s. Yeah, I think it was mid-90s.
And it's owned by Metro Waste.
Correct.
What's the longevity of it?
So we asked that question because we were hoping that maybe Metro we were close to a replacement cycle. Unfortunately, the pipes have, I think, at least 20 or 30 years left on them. So
they have to be replaced anyway.
In 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what that meant for us is that Metro said, it's not in our current capital improvement plan to replace them early.
But we as the public, we also pay a sewer tax.
That's true.
The damn thing keeps going up. And I would ask you as a favor, if you could get me the name of the individuals on that committee.
Which committee? Sorry.
The committee that you referred to in your opening.
Okay.
Because, one of the things, and I think everybody on this committee ought to get on their hind legs. We totally have been ignored for so damn long, and there was no public process, to my knowledge, when they put that interceptor line in. And we're going to move forward. I don't get stuck on the past. But they have to hear from us directly, and not to hold up this project that we went out, took it to the public, and got the votes to make the commitment to get this done. And whatever it takes, it's going to have to be done, and get it done. I ain't going to wait on the Army Corps of Engineers, because who the hell knows what Trump's going to come up with next. We need to push forward, and I would encourage you to, go double time on it.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
Would it be inappropriate for us to extend an invitation to the Army Corps and Metsur to come do a presentation here?
To the Army Corps or to Metro?
Both.
Both.
Sure.
The owner and I presume they got a standard, here's what we do, here's how we move poop around or whatever.
I think I can't speak for Army Corps. We can talk to Stephen about it. I think one thing I want to say about Metro, and Metro has been a wonderful partner in this process, and they're extremely engaged and they're very excited.
I actually think Councilman Paul Lopez is currently chairman of the Metro board, of the Met board.
Could be, I don't know.
Yeah, I think he is.
Yeah, and they've been wonderful partners, and I think we can bring them to the next CAC when we talk through evaluation of the various opportunities. And I think they would love to hear from the community about your feelings and aspirations for the riverfront. I think that would be wonderful.
I would say publicly, they owe us. They owe it. They left our inheritance was that damn old Metro, the Northside treatment plant, and we're paying for where they are now. And let's get this thing going, because we got a job to do here. And whatever it takes, we'll get it done.
So Eric, we'll work with you to get contact information to extend info. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, great.
And as much as we like talking about solid waste, it's intriguing. It's 7:40, so we need to move on. Drew, you get the last question. Please make it quick.
Sorry, I'll be quick. If it's a matter of the money, why can't Metro Wastewater treat this as a capital project? Okay, they don't yet need to replace it, they have 20 years, but we pay the fees as John has explained. Why can't they contribute something? Why is this?
It never hurts to ask. I wish I had the authority to say yes, but it never hurts to ask.
Okay, well, thanks, Eric.
Thank you very much.
We'll transition from solid waste to something less solid.
Hey, Eric, something's out of your pocket down there. It's not money, so I'm not going to.
And always enlightening Anna Jones.
Good evening, everybody. And in the interest of not holding you here much longer, we are not going to load up our presentation, and I can just give you the 30-second version, an update on the 47th and York Bikehead Bridge effort. And we are, a couple of things. One is we are finalizing our selection for the consulting team to come in and begin the 30% design process. So it's really a 30% to 100% design. We can finance right now the 30%, assuming we can find more money under, the sofa cushions. We will continue to extend the study through the 100%. We are anticipating being in front of committees, certainly starting now in front of the general obligation bond, stakeholder committees, to bring the capital request forward. So that is really the big update I wanted to provide you. We've put together a video with the help of Swansea Elementary. AE's been supportive of that effort as well. And I was going to fire that up, but maybe I'll treat you with that next month. It's actually quite a lovely video that highlights a lot of the students at Swansea and talks about their firsthand experience there. So that is my brief gift to you. Do you have any NWCC related questions?
Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Yeah, did you have a question?
I just want a related, hold that date on the, and I appreciate this brevity. The announcement just came out on the Heron Pond Master Plan about a May 13th picnic in Northside, soon to be renamed Northside Park, as part of the rollout for public input. May 13th, 10 to 1. Just kind of a quick save that date, coming out of that master planning process and details. We hope to have a good community turnout. And, that just came out from Century AEs. Who's the project manager?
Yeah, public meetings for
yeah.
both Washington
Yeah.
Street and Heron Pond coming up in the next several weeks.
Jocelyn, yeah, do you want to, Jocelyn just mentioned the survey.
I think that there's also a survey that I think I sent
Heron
to
Pond Master Plan.
Liz
Yeah.
for the Heron Pond Master
Yeah.
Plan that closes tomorrow.
It's online.
It's really brief, so if you have 5 minutes to go on there and just express a few preferences, that would be helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Wow.
Jocelyn, what's that website?
It's,
Send the link. Can you send the link?
Yeah, I can probably.
Liz will send the link.
I can send the link.
No, Liz is going to send the link. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
Anything, announcements?
Just real quick,
Comments?
my name is Maria, Kenna Jones, Michael Sapp, and everybody else was out with Marketplace on their birthday. Fantastic to join us April 22nd at the school. I'd love to see everybody out there.
Birthday?
Whose birthday?
Earth Day.
Earth Day.
Earth Day's birthday. All right. Are we adjourned officially?
Yeah, anything else?
For the good of the order, any public comment?
No, I don't hear any. Okay.
You really want to go home? I know.
We're adjourned. Thank you.